When I was a little girl, I used to love fairy tales. Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, it was my favorite. I was always encouraged how they would take something so broken and it would end up so beautiful. Well, as I've gotten older, I've come to realize life is not a fairy tale at all. It's very real. But you know, God can take our brokenness and He can make something so very beautiful. So join me as we explore chapter by chapter stories of faith, determination, and courage of people that you may very well know. You may not think you do, but we all have a story to tell.
My name is Travis McDonald, and this is my story. I grew up right outside a little place called Joy. We all called it Berry's Ferry. I grew up like a typical McDonald kid, just hunting and fishing. That's just what we all did. Just went with my grandpa, my grandfather, my dad, my uncles, duck hunting, turkey hunting, and went to church at Carswell Pentecostal Church. And every Sunday after church, we just went to my grandmother's and had just a typical Sunday dinner. All the family got together and just hung out as a family. I had an older sister. My mother and my father, we all lived, like I said, right outside of Berry's Ferry. It's just a loving, fun-filled home. Just typical country kids, you know, just played outside all the time. But it was a very strong family. Just, we did everything we could together. Didn't have a whole lot coming up, but we had enough just to get by. And anybody who knows anything about Carswell, it's a very small town now, but when I was a kid, there was a whole bunch of boys and girls and kids my age, and we just rode bikes and, you know, had flashlight tag at nighttime and hide and seek, just, you know, just typical small town kid stuff. But I always remember my grandmother. She was just, for a long time, she played the piano at Carswell Church, and she was just an outstanding Christian lady. I mean, she taught us right, you know, and that passed down to my dad, and then my mother taught me and my sister right. But I just remember as a kid, just Thanksgiving and Christmases and Sunday dinners, it was all family. It didn't matter if you was part of our family or not. If you came into my grandmother's house, you was just family. I mean, you was treated the same, no matter who you was, what you had did. They was very loving family, opened their arms to anybody who came into their house. I played basketball all through my elementary school years, and my dad, he coached. He didn't really have time, but he made time to coach some of the times. And I got in middle school, become a teenager. I still played basketball, but I don't know, I guess I just grew tired of it, and my dad wasn't my coach anymore, and I just started hanging out with people that I probably shouldn't have. And when I got in middle school, my 7th grade year, I just started smoking weed at a very young age. And it wasn't like a daily thing, but every chance I could, you know, I would just start smoking weed. And then, you know, drinking, just typical teenage stuff. And then, I just remember as a teenager, I just pushed everybody I could that I knew would keep me, try to get me to not do the bad things. I just pushed everybody away. I just didn't want nothing to do with anybody. If you wasn't in my circle of friends, I just pushed everybody away. When I went into high school, I always ran with the older guys. Had a cousin and just had a lot of older friends that was juniors and seniors. And I went from smoking weed to, that just kind of progressed, and I'd smoke it, like I said, not daily, but it was every time I was around it. And then when I was a freshman in high school, I tried methamphetamines. And that changed my whole entire life, because I've always been a high energy person anyway. Like, I don't do good sitting still. I'm wide open. And that was the drug for me. And at first I thought, well, this is kind of fun. And I guess you never really know how much you're doing until you go to quit, for me. And all through my freshman year, it was everywhere. I mean, you didn't have to look very far in Livingston County to get it. And it was just fun. I thought at the time it was, you and your buddies get together and you just get high and you ride around back roads. I mean, and that's what we did. And then, sometimes it'd be meth, and then it'd be cocaine and pills. And I've never been a follower. I mean, if I wanted to do something, peer pressure wasn't going to make me do it. I did it because I enjoyed it. I never cared about if I had a whole lot of friends. I didn't do it to be cool. I just enjoyed the feeling of drugs. And I have a very addictive personality. I can get hooked on just about anything. I mean, and when I was in high school, I never understood that. I watched my dad work hard my whole life, and I worked for a guy, broke a lot of his horses, worked on a farm, hauled hay. But I got hooked up with some other people that was away from here, and I figured out there was other ways to make money. One of the worst decisions I ever made in my life, I think. But it went about my senior year, everything changed for me, because the people I was running around with was not from around here, and they took it serious. And I realized I was too late, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't just fun and games. Everything was serious. It was business, and you can get yourself in a very bad situation and just be a naive young kid from little old Berry's Ferry, and then pretty soon you're in over your head. I mean, I had some of my closest friends that had no idea, because I've always been a private person. I didn't talk about much. And a lot of my friends to this day didn't even realize what I was all into, but it just got completely out of hand. My mother, she made a decision one time trying to get me cleaned up, and she was doing what she thought was the right thing, because she didn't want to see her son, because I was dying. I mean, when I graduated high school, I'm 6'4" and I weighed 112 pounds. I was just skin and bones, and they knew something was wrong, but they just didn't understand the severity of it. And I had to go to Narcotics Anonymous. I used drugs the whole time I went through there. I knew how to get away from the drug test, pass them. But I always knew that the only way I was ever going to quit is if I wanted to quit. Like, my parents, no matter what they did, my friends, I pushed a lot of my friends away because I got so wrapped up in that lifestyle that I didn't want them to get into the same predicament I was in. And I lost a lot of good friends. I mean, a lot of them I haven't seen in years. A lot of them passed away in jail. I got wrapped up in that whirlwind. I couldn't get out of it. When I graduated high school, I made a decision that I was going to quit. I was going to just do my best to completely get off drugs of all kinds. And it was a long process because I had hurt a lot of people in my family, friends along the way. But I knew that I got myself in this situation, and I was going to be the one who had to get myself out of it. I mean, I'd been raised in church my whole life, but I went to church for the last, I don't know, few years I went because I was made to go to church. And I never knew, at the time, I wasn't going to ask God to help me because I got myself in this predicament. And like I said, it was a very long and drawn-out process, but I made my mind up I was going to get clean, and I was just going to start, I'm not going to say living right, like living for the Lord, but I wanted to get out of that lifestyle because I knew there was nothing good going to come out of it. And my grandfather helped me get a job at a local rock quarry, and I pretty much I just disappeared. I didn't hang out. I never leave my parents' house. I still living at home. And I just worked. I stayed away from everybody used to run around with. Because I knew I enjoyed it so much, I couldn't be around it at that time. I mean, once you're an addict, once you start sobering up and cleaning up, it don't take very much. I don't know. It don't take a very smart man to realize I can't be around this because I enjoy it. And it was a very hard process for me because everybody I had hung out with all them years, a lot of them was still doing it. And they was some of my closest friends. I mean, they'd be there for you if you needed them. And the ones who wasn't doing it, as much as I pushed them away because, well, you ain't no fun. I mean, you don't understand what it's like. And I just made a decision one day. I was like, I'm not going to live like this. And I stuck to my guns. I slipped up a couple of times every now and then, but for the most part, like a lot of people thought I actually died when I graduated high school. I seen them at, grocery store or something. Like, man, we thought you was dead. But I wanted them. In a way, I did die. The old me died, is what I thought. I was working at the rock quarry at Martin Marietta, and my mother had told me, she said, hey, I know this girl and only my mother, I know this girl that asked me for your number. And I was like, oh yeah, who's that? And she told me, and my mom said, I told her to stay away from you. You're no good. You ain't gonna take her out on dates. You're just pretty much an old man. Just work, come home, hang out there, ride your horses, work the cows, whatever. Well, it didn't work, I got Chassie's number and I called her, and I knew her as a kid growing up, but I really didn't know nothing about her. And I called her, and I think we played phone tag for, I don't know, a day or two. We finally I get in touch with her, and I invite her down told her I'll cook for you. So she comes down that day, and I cooked tacos, and it was taco meat and a shell, and that was and a little bit of sauce. And God bless her, she ate it. She hated it. She told me afterwards. But she was down that night, and there was something about her. It was just, I was drawn to her. We talked all night. She went home, and I thought, well, I'm going to be the tough guy. I'm not going to call her. I'm going to make her call me. And that didn't work. So I broke down, and I called her, and I invited her back down again, and she said, I'll come down. She said, but we're not going to cook tacos. And I knew from probably the second day that me and her was together that I loved her. I mean, there was something about her that I just seen how she was such a good person. one day I just told myself, I said, I'm going to ask her to marry me. And I don't think about much. I make a decision and I just do it. So I did it, and she said yes. I love her to the moon and back. And we started going to church at Carsville once we got married. But I wasn't in it because I went to church like Pastor Chris and Pastor Sue say, to check the box. I'd go to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night and Wednesday with her, pretty much because she made me go to church. But she always stood by me, no matter what situation it was in. I mean, there's times we didn't have enough money to do nothing, but she always stood by me, and we're just a great team. Chassie come to me and she wanted to, start living for God more and, just getting more into it. And I had actually went up there and rededicated my life, got baptized, and she did the same thing. And we had Sadler, and Chassie had a hard time having Sadler. She was in labor for a long time, and I was living for God, and I thought I was doing exactly what I was supposed to, but I had no faith. And when Sadler was born, my world just completely changed. I mean, the first time I held her, nothing else mattered at that time. I mean, she was my little girl. And Chassie had a lot of complications, and I just remember I stayed up the hospital the whole time because Chassie couldn't hold her at the time. She couldn't get up and walk very good. And then, I finally felt like I had a purpose when I had Sadler, or when we had Sadler. Words just can't express of the love that I have for that little girl. And, she's 5 now, and she knows it. She can pretty much get away with anything she wants if she asks Daddy for it. And then we had Tripp about 3 years later. And Tripp had a lot of complications too. He actually I made my sister come back there in the delivery room because I was like, "You're not leaving me back here by myself, Amanda." And Tripp's umbilical cord got wrapped around his neck. And they never told us how bad it was, but I'll never forget this. Me and my sister sitting in there, and they had the monitors on Chastity. And this nurse, I seen a look of fear in her eye, and she ran over and she hit some button. And then nurses just came flying in there. And I knew something could possibly be going wrong. Well, they threw me this gown to put on, or a suit, and I'm 6'4", and this thing might have fit somebody 4 foot tall. And my sister laughs. Amanda laughed so hard. I put this thing on, it's about to my knees. But I panicked, and I don't panic. But she was like, "You need to come back here." And about 2 minutes later, my little boy was here. And I was so overwhelmed because, they had to cut Chastity open, and I thought, man, this boy's gonna be something, because he came in wild. Having kids is such a blessing to me, because all I care about is doing right and teaching them right. And, now that my little boy is up and growing, and, my little Princess Sadler, everything we do is a family. If we're processing cattle, if we're hauling in hay, we do everything as a family. And it's so important to me and even, I had, rededicated my life, and I thought I was living for the Lord the best way that I thought I could. And of all the years that I hated myself for the things I did to people and, just living awful, when I was with my kids, all that went away. And now, Trip, he wants to be just like his daddy. And anything, if I wear boots and a shirt, he's got to have boots and a shirt. But we have did the absolute best we could to raise them. And we was eating supper here, I don't know, a couple of months ago, when I had been chasing a cow a few years back, and I had a horse get down on me, and it messed up my shoulder. So we was sitting there and eat. Trip prays. We all take turns praying. He prayed. And we go in there and go to bed, and he's laying in there, and I was going to say our prayers. He told me, he said, "No, Daddy, I want to pray tonight." And he put his hand on my shoulder. And he prayed for my shoulder to be healed. And I told Chassie, I said, we may not get everything right, and we may do a lot of mistakes, but at least my 3-year-old boy knows that he knows what the power of prayer can do. And they are everything to me. I first started, during the COVID, I was on the boat, and I got to watching Life in Christ on their Facebook Live. And I don't know, I can remember the place I was at when I first heard Pastor Chris he was preaching, and it felt like he was talking to me and me alone. And so I called Chastity, and I'm like, "Hey, are you watching Life in Christ?" Well, she was watching it too. And during COVID, everything was just, crazy. And my work schedule, I couldn't come to church all the time. And then we just kept watching it and kept watching it. And one day she called me, she said, "You want to go Life in Christ?" And I was like, "I was fixing to ask you the same thing." And anybody who knows Cartersville Pentecostal Church, 90% of people in that church is family, and it's just a small church. Everybody, they love, if you're not family, you're just like family. I'd never been to a church this big. And we pulled up, but I'm a very nervous person for the most part, and I don't do big crowds. And we walked through the doors, and it was just instant. And then praise and worship. And they just, when Chris or Pastor Sue preach, I don't know, something about this church it took over my life. And I was in a place where I needed a place like this church because I had a lot of baggage that I was holding on to. And I don't care who you are, when you hold on to a lot of baggage, it can make you a bitter person. And I was a very hard person. I was hard to everybody but my wife. Well, I was even hard to my wife. I wasn't as hard to my little girl and my boy. But I had such a hard heart and it was nobody's fault but my own, because I would not let my past go. And after hearing the preaching here, it just slowly started breaking off of me. It took a while. Like, I wanted to serve God, but it was so clear to me just that God wants the best for you. Let that other stuff go. God forgive you, so you need to forgive yourself. I've always been the kind of person, I'm a realist. If it don't look possible, I'll be the first. I'm not negative, I don't think. Some things just, in my opinion, used to not be possible. And at this church, there's nothing God can't do. And I used to listen to that preaching, and I'd be like, man, I don't know about that. Like, I want to believe that, but deep down I think that's not possible. certain things just, you know, my whole theory was if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. You work hard for it, you can advance in life. And then, but the more and I would just pray that, you know, Lord, just give me the strength to follow you and put all my faith into you. And me and Chassie just made a decision, and she still has to help me through it sometimes, but I speak life to it. That is the main thing that I've learned from here. You speak life to something, and like Pastor Chris said that one service, even if you don't fully believe it, say it, and just keep saying it. Since we've been coming to church here, I've got an usher team. My kids absolutely love kids' church. I mean, that's all they talk about. You know, Sadler sometimes say 4 or 5 times a day, we're going to church tonight. No, it's Tuesday, Sadler, you know. But it's just, if you'd have told me a year and a half, 2 years ago that I would be an usher at a church like this, or my kids would be just super excited about going to kids' church, I'd have said, my kids possibly, yes, because they love the church and the teaching at Carsville. But me, no. I'm not really a outgoing type person. You know, I mean, if I don't know you, I don't go out of my way to meet you. I know that sounds so awful, but there's just such a presence of, like, people come to this church because they want to come to church. And I think that's just what it is. I find myself, like if I'm on the boat, running the boat, and I'm watching it on my phone, yeah, I mean, yeah, you get to hear the preaching, but if you come in this place and you don't feel something during praise and worship, I mean, I'm not an emotional guy. I was kind of raised that old school, just, you know, men just toughen up, just don't show a whole lot of emotions. But I can sit back there in that corner during praise and worship. Sometimes I cry the whole time they're singing. And that's anybody who really honestly knows me, that's not me. But I made a deal with God. Me and Chassie was getting ready to come to service one Wednesday. And Pastor Sue got on Facebook Live and was just kind of giving an update of what all was going to go on. And they was at their house, I believe. Chris walked by, and she said, "You got anything to say?" And I'm telling you, I can tell you exactly what I was doing when this happened. And he said, "Come to church tonight. People's lives are going to get changed, and I'm going to pull people out of their comfort zone." Or some, it may not have been that exact way, but it was something to that effect. And I was brushing my teeth, and I said, "Man, I feel sorry for them people." And I kept brushing, and it was instant. I knew it right then. I felt it. And I got, my anxiety got built up, and I thought, that ain't talking about me. We get in the car on the way to church. The closer we get to church, I mean, and I'm a nervous person, but I'm pretty laid back. I don't get real excited. And he pulled into the church out there, and got out of the car, and I was shaking. Never had this happen, nothing like this before. And I was walking to church, holding a little boy's hand, and I thought, something's going to happen tonight. And I said it to myself, but I said, "Lord, I give you my word. If you can help me forgive myself for the things I've did, I'll go for you, and I will go for you as hard as I can go." Now, and for the most part, I tried that. Well, that night, Pastor Chris, who knows how I am, I'm kind of in the shadows. He calls me up here, and I don't know what happened, but when he called my name, I never thought about it. I just came up here, and he prayed with me, and then I went down one side and praying for people. I was so out of my comfort zone, it wasn't even funny. But that did something for me because I thought, I'm old school, and if I give you my word, that's what it is. And I don't know, I told God that day, and I guess that night, he was like, okay then, cowboy, we'll see if you can do it. And I fail daily. I try my hardest. I wake up every morning, pray to be a good Christian, do everything I can to live right. I fail every day, but I've made my mind up. Even if I fail, I'm going to go as hard as I can go for God. My name is Travis McDonald, and that was my story.